Hello and welcome to Master Integrator, the podcast for the people who design, sell and install the technology that runs modern homes and buildings. I'm your host, Paul Skelton. This week, we're getting into something a lot of you are weighing up right now. Should you build a showroom? And if you do, how do you make sure it actually pays for itself? My guest today is Leslie Shiner, one of the sharpest financial and business minds in this industry, and she does not let you get off the hook with easy answers. So stick around, we'll be straight into it after a quick word from this episode's sponsors. Before we get into this episode, a quick thank you to the brands that make Master Integrator possible. This episode is brought to you by ADI Global, formerly Snap One, your one-stop partner for professional integration. ADI brings together powerhouse brands like Control4, Arachnus, Binary and Strong, along with a carefully curated range of distributed products, all under one roof. And they back it up with genuine integrator-first support from system design through to installation and beyond. They're focused on helping you deliver smarter, more reliable projects, because when you win, they win. If you want to learn more, give the team a call on 1800 990 548. This episode is also brought to you by Bluesound and BlueOS, the audiophile-grade multi-room audio platform designed for both discerning listeners and custom integration professionals. Supporting high-resolution, 24-bit, 192 kHz audio, BlueOS delivers exceptional sound quality while offering flexible, scalable deployment across residential and commercial projects. With no mandatory cloud accounts required, BlueOS can operate entirely on a local network, providing a secure, privacy-focused solution with reliable local control. Bluesound is supported in Australia by Amber Technology. This episode is also brought to you by Somfy. If you're tired of juggling multiple apps and protocols for your clients, Somfy's Tahoma Switch Hub connects over 300 brands so you can control blinds, lights, cameras, garage doors, HVAC, sound systems, and more, all from a single app. One ecosystem, endless possibilities. Visit somfy.com.au to learn more. So, showrooms. Almost every integrator I talk to has thought about building one. And most of them start with the room. The speakers, the screens, the lighting, all before they've worked out why they want one in the first place. Leslie Shiner flips that on its head. She is a financial and business consultant who has spent years inside the numbers of integration businesses. And her first question is never, what do you put in a showroom? It's, why are you building it at all? We get into goals before gear, the real cost of the upkeep, the payback maths, treating the showroom like one of your own projects, and the good, better, best approach that quietly lifts your margins. This is Master Integrator. Here's Leslie Shiner. Leslie, welcome back to the show. So tell me,
Thank you.
how has your life changed?
Happy to be here.
How has your life changed since you were last on Master Integrator? I'm sure everything's just fallen into place. Everyone saw you, came flocking to you, asked for autographs, all of that.
It was great. I like the clips. I liked how it was presented, and so it was a lot of fun. And I'm happy to do it again.
Excellent. Well, that's probably lucky that you're here then, because we're going to do it again. So today we're talking about something that I know has been a massive issue in the industry, and I'm sure that you've seen it too. As a judge for the CEDIA Business Awards as well, you would have definitely seen this, but integrators starting showrooms. Great idea, quite often poorly executed. So I want to pick your brain a little bit about it. It seems like a lot of integrators are either in the middle of building showrooms at the moment, or they're definitely thinking about it. What would you say to them if they came to you and said, I'm going to start a showroom? Would you caution them against it, or would you sit there and say, great, but?
There are advantages of having showrooms if it's, like you said, executed correctly. But, it's interesting because in the business awards, there's a conversation about having a showroom. And one of the questions is, what's your ROI on the showroom? And nobody says it. Nobody can measure it. Nobody's saying it I'm selling this much more, I'm doing this or I'm doing that. So before you even start a showroom, you have to come up with your goals. What are your goals? You're trying to get your clients in there. You're obviously trying to probably sell more or at least have a better sales process. If that's your goal, then certainly that's a possibility. But you also have to take a look at how much is it going to cost you. So showrooms can be fairly, inexpensive because some manufacturers will give you products to put in the showroom. One of the biggest problems I see is showrooms that get rated, and that's the word I'm looking for. And all of a sudden there's holes in the wall where a speaker used to be because somebody needed a speaker and they didn't order it in time, that sort of thing. Or they have something and it's the previous version. Things come out so quickly. Um, I mean, I'm not going to use specific examples from specific manufacturers, but things change so rapidly that if you don't have the latest and greatest, you're like, oh, I can throw out something, here's a Lutron shades. Oh, wait, they've changed the way they're structured. Or here's a Sonos whatever. And oh, wait, they don't sell that product anymore. Or it's the whole shape of it changes. So if you're trying to give the client, you're trying to use the showroom to give the client an idea of what it looks like installed, and the equipment in there is old, they don't even sell it or make it anymore, that's not good. So you have to look at the cost, the original cost of the showroom, and then what's the cost of the upkeep? First of all, who's going to be in charge? Who's going to review it? Maybe we have to have a 3-month review. We set up every quarter. We go through everything in the showroom and say, do we still sell these products, or has there been a new release, or is there something else that we prefer to sell better? Because if you create the showroom and you don't pay attention to it, it just becomes a dinosaur. So that's, I think, the first biggest drawback to showrooms is it takes energy, it takes time, and it takes money. And if you're not increasing your sales by having the showroom, then you're not really helping yourself out. The other question is, where are you geographically located? Are you geographically located where, there's a manufacturer showroom? Why don't we go to that one? I can take my client and meet me at the lighting control showroom, whatever that is, because there are a lot of manufacturers have showrooms. Why can't we go and take a look at all the speakers that are offered here if that's if we rep that particular product? So it may be cheaper, I mean certainly cheaper not to have to carry all the products yourself, and reps or manufacturers love having you walk through their showroom. So if you are, I'm just creating my businesses in downtown Los Angeles or downtown Sydney or London or any of those, that's probably an opportunity that you could use. If you're out in the middle of nowhere, and you're very rural, or you're just an hour away from a big city, I doubt that I'm going to get a client to drive with me for an hour to get to that big city to get to that showroom. So I think it's really important to look at, from a client's perspective, where can they see this stuff live? And that depends on your geographic location. So that's absolutely one of the things to really take a look at, whether that works for you or doesn't work for you.
And you're right. And a supplier is very rarely going to say, no, you can't bring a client in because they also want to make the sale.
Right.
So you've touched on a couple of things here that I want to come back to. First of all, around the idea of setting goals. Uh, and I think it's important there because a lot of people, they wouldn't have set goals before, so they might not necessarily know, and it's going to sound stupid, but they might not know what a goal is, and the fact that a goal needs to be measurable, not just I want to sell more. So how
I want to do better.
that's it. So how do they then go about setting those goals that are measurable and then actually making sure they achieve them, but also verify that they've met those goals?
Right. So there's different types of goals. One is profit, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But another one is, what's the timeline between the client giving me the call and me making the sale? Does it take 3 weeks? Does it take 3 months? And again, it sort of depends on job size, but will a showroom allow me to speed up that process? There's only so many hours in the day. If my goal is to increase my volume or to make sales, if a sale can happen so much faster because they're walking into the showroom and they're going, oh, I want that, I want that, I want that, and I want that. You can measure that because hopefully you have a CRM program of some sort, customer relations management of some sort. You can put in from the customer perspective the dates they contacted you first and be able to track sort of milestones from, say, contact to first proposal to closing the deal. Just those three things are important dates. And if you could start measuring that, how long does that take, and see, that would certainly be one of the goals of the showroom. So it's not always just money, it could be time. Of course, as I always say, time is money. Everybody says time is money. But that would certainly be one of the goals, is to shorten your sales cycle. Then the goal would also be, or what is the goal? Is the goal to increase your revenue? Now, I always, I always say there's three ways to improve profits. One is to charge more, raise your rates, manage your jobs against the scope and charge for change orders. Two is to spend less, don't waste a lot of time, take the number of hours you thought it would take to do. And then the third is to sell more. A lot of people who want to improve their profits think that the number one way is to just sell more. And before you jump to that conclusion, I always step back and say, maybe you should think about charging more or managing your jobs better or making sure they're coming in on time, on budget. If I'm the old joke about what I lost in profit, I made up in volume. If you're losing money on the work you're doing a bunch more work will make you not make more money, but lose more money. So step back and analyze the whole business and say to yourself, is increased sales one of my goals? And then if that is a goal, then how does the showroom fit into that? Can I bring more people in? Can I have a lunch and learn or some networking event? Showrooms are great depending on what they look like, of having a network, inviting people over for breakfast or lunch and doing some sort of networking event. One of the things, though, I've seen when I've seen lots of different showrooms is that has to be a dedicated showroom. Don't think that you can take your office and put speakers in your office and do all this stuff inside an office, because that's an office. And if I'm going to come and take a look at your showroom, I want to see how does it look in my house. I don't want to see how does it look in my office, unless you're doing office work. So make sure that the showroom replicates what they're going to see inside their house. Now, I just did a CEDIA design outreach webinar, and it was funny because we talked about working with designers, working with architects, working with builders, and designers love touch, feel, showroomy stuff. If your business model is based on getting jobs and working with designers, showrooms are great. If your business model is built on your, say, general contractors reaching out to you for remodels and new construction, then a showroom probably is not as valuable, because the general is the one that's in charge of that relationship. Architects are similar to designers, but they aren't as touchy-feely loving the showroom stuff. They just want to be able to draft and get the work done. So I go back to looking at the goals. It depends on who's your client. Who do you expect to bring to this showroom? And I would start keeping records, whether it's a spreadsheet or a CRM, of who visited your showroom, who took somebody through in your company, but who are you bringing to your showroom? Are you just using it for potential customers? Or are you bringing in designers, and are you bringing in architects or builders if you can? Because that's a different way of using the showroom. Some people think the showroom is just so the homeowner can go in and pick stuff out, but that's not the only reason to have a showroom. So start tracking the goal of how many people are going to go through this showroom at any one time. How many people do I expect in a month? And what's the cost of having that? You want to make sure there's coffee and snacks and that sort of thing. So one of the goals is how many people. One of the goals is who are the people. And then ultimately the goal is profitability. How's this going to be more profitable for my company? Well, it can be more profitable because maybe you can sell more high-end stuff. If the customer gets to touch and feel it, they can, when I'm looking at speakers on a piece of paper, do I want this kind or this kind? I don't know. Well, wait, let me listen to this one and let me listen to that one. Now I can make a decision. Now I can see it is worth spending more money to have a higher quality speaker. It is worth, putting the speaker inside the wall instead of hanging from the ceiling. All of those things, hopefully, from a goal perspective, will help you increase the revenue, sell the higher end products that have a bigger margin. Does that answer your question? I'm
It,
sort of rambling off on
no,
that,
no,
but those are some of the.
it certainly does. So what I'm thinking too. So a lot of the integrators I talk to, they who want a showroom, they almost think that it almost legitimizes their business by having that showroom, but they've never built one before, and they always sit there and think, okay, so how much does a showroom cost? And that's a great question. How much does a showroom cost? I mean, is there a way to say, okay, well, it should be based on this percentage of your annual turnover or this many years revenue? I mean, is there something they need to factor in when they decide, I'm doing a showroom, this is what I can invest?
Wow, that's a good question. I don't have, hard and fast numbers, but I can say that. So, for example, I'm trying to decide if I should buy another van. Okay, so I know how much those cost. I'm going to wrap it. I know how much that costs. And that van's going to be good for at least 5 years, maybe seven, maybe 10. The problem with the showroom is people think again about the building cost, but what about the maintenance cost? So what you want to do is come up with an idea of how much you think it would cost you to build. Can you get, do you have to buy all the equipment, or are suppliers, manufacturers going to give you some of that equipment? So put together a full budget, just like you would do for doing a client's home. Do a budget for the showroom to figure out how much it would cost. Let's say, and again, it's all over the map, throwing out a number, $100,000, euros, pounds, whatever, 100,000. So if I'm going to invest 100,000 in this thing, then how do I get back the 100,000? So if I look at my numbers and I look at my margin, if I have a margin of about 35%, that says for every job that I do, I'm going to be making 35% on it. Then I also have to pay for my overhead. So what's the margin that I'm going to be able to achieve to be able to pay that back? So if I have $1 million worth of work at 35%, that gives me $350,000 of gross profit. Great. I'm doing $1 million. I got 350. Well, what's my overhead? My overhead's let's say 250. That gives me a profit of 100. I build a showroom. Where's that going? Now all of a sudden I have a $100,000 profit that I could put in my pocket, or I could say I'm reinvesting it, and then that showroom that cost 100,000 will basically take over 1 year's profit. So I'm going to basically have no profit that year. Doesn't quite work that way in accounting terms because there's a capitalized expense issue, but that's basically, look at your net profit and look at the net that your company makes and figure out how many years of net profit will that showroom eat up. And again, I talk about I threw out just a number, $100,000 or pounds or euros. Then next year I still have to spend 10, 15, 20 to keep it up. And so how much does that take? So really looking at your net profit that your company earns, and throwing out, if volume didn't change, if nothing changed, but now I had a showroom, how long would it take to, in essence, pay it back? If it cost 100,000 and I make my net profit is 50,000, it's going to take me 2 years. Now, why would I do that? Well, if I build a showroom and my net profit doesn't change, my volume doesn't change, and nothing changes, then you shouldn't build a showroom. Then you have to go in and project. Okay, I build a showroom. Last year I sold 1 million. My goal is to sell 1.2 million. Well, that extra money is going to be used to pay back the showroom. So that's where you have to project what would your revenue do, say, over the next 5 years. It's hard, you have to just kind of make up a number, but say if I didn't have the showroom versus I did have the showroom, how much do I think that it can increase my sales? How much more could I sell? Now, if you don't have the labor to do the work, and you don't have the project managers and you don't have the technicians, then selling a whole bunch more doesn't help because you can't actually do that work. But if you could increase your volume, that's what's going to be used to pay back the cost of building the showroom. I think a showroom should bring a return of 3 years or less. Some people say 5. That's a number, but I think if you're not going to be able to make that up in at least 5 years, hopefully 3 years, then it's probably not helpful to you to build the showroom. And that goes back to your original question, why? Someone says, should I build a showroom? And my first answer is, I don't know why. Why do you want to? What do you think it's going to do? Are you doing it to make yourself look more, what did you
To
say? It would make
legitimize.
you legitimate,
Yeah.
legitimize you. So yes, legitimizing you. Okay, why? Why do you need that? Do you think you could get more work? Because right now they're just going into your garage, which has been turned into an office, or you're going to move into a real office. And again, it depends. Are you really small and you only have working out of a spare? You kick the kids out, send them off to college, and now that's your office, or are you working out of the garage, or do you actually have an office? And the other question on that is the showroom fitting in your office, or are you going to have to get a bigger office? Now, what's your monthly nut that you're going to have to come up with to pay for this showroom? My office is really small, so I don't have room for a showroom. We're going to move the whole office to a bigger office so we can add the showroom. My rent goes from X to Y. Is that can my company afford that much increase in just plain old overhead? Whether I even built out the showroom, can my company pay for that? So it's hard to sort of throw out exact numbers, but it's looking at those numbers and comparing what's the ongoing cost of the showroom and come up, I think, with a really good projection. The build out, the maintenance, are you increasing your rent? All of those things. I had someone who wanted to. There are some integrators who use their house as a showroom. I think that's a mistake. I think maybe they just want to have really good home theater and speakers in their house. As a client, and I'm walking through your house, it just doesn't feel like a showroom. And at least in America, and the IRS would not like that either. They might have something to say about that. So, yeah, that's where I think it's important to try and project out those. What are the total costs of the showroom over the next 3 to 5 years, and how are you going to make it up? Are you going to make it up with increased revenue? Or are you going to make it up because now we're repping this product instead of that product? We're going to sell more of these. Um, how often look at your sales process? How often does somebody come to you? There's a guy in my backyard who I would say could sell. Is this? I don't know if I can say this. Can sell ice to a Inuit. Um, People would come to him with an idea of what they wanted, and they would walk away thrilled that they're spending 3 times more than they thought. Now, that's a good salesperson. Is your sales staff that good? Can they do that? Or do people come to you with an idea of what they want, and then when you give them the price, they're like, oh, I can't do that. Oh, man, that's too expensive. What can you take out? So look at your sales process. How are you dealing with your salespeople, and what is happening when you're talking to when the salespeople are talking to the clients? How good are they at selling? Some are very good, and some aren't.
So a lot of what you've just spoken about there, to me, sounds like a business plan. So let's talk about that a bit, because I do know so many integration companies don't have a business plan. They never would have created one. They never would have seen the need for it because they just think it's just me, or maybe me and an apprentice, or whatever it is. So even at that level, can you explain why it's important for them to have a business plan and to be able to use that to justify all the decisions they make within their business?
Absolutely. And you know what's really who's really helpful in making you build a business plan? AI. You can pop into a thing on a computer and open up Chat GPT or Claude or whatever you Grok, and say, I need a business plan. What, or you can also put your business plan in there and say, what am I missing? So the business plan needs to have what your goals are, what your well, that's a SWOT, is strengths and weaknesses. But a business plan really needs to be something where you sit down and say, what are the values of our company? And what is our goal in the next 3 years from a numeric standpoint, as well as from a uh, reputation standpoint, as well as what kind of jobs do we want? And yeah, if I'm small and somebody says, "Hey, do you do this?" I'm like, "Yeah, but are you specializing in home theaters and you pretty much do that? Are you what is the saying? Jack of all trades and master of none? Do you just do whatever anybody says you're going to do?" I think the more focused your business can be, and what is your goal? I want to integrate smart home technology into your home, and we're going to focus on these three areas: security, sound, entertainment, lighting. Look at those areas and break those out. Then also to do a study to find out which is more profitable. Now, I always use this example. I have talked to somebody who does, um, he just sells Ring cameras, let's say. He just sells and installs Ring cameras. And he does it for a flat fee. He can do two or three a day and he makes a fortune because he charges a good amount. He goes in, he teaches them how to do it, and that's what he wants to do. And if somebody says, "Hey, could you, take a look at my network or my speakers or my other stuff in my house?" You're like, "Nope, I'm just doing that." But that's what he wants to do, and he doesn't have any employees, and he's making enough money to support his family. There are others where they start the business and they got in and they're like, "Okay, I did this really great project. Can I replicate that for other clients?" So, what is your goal in terms of what do you sell? Again, someone said this great. They said, "We don't sell products, we sell an experience." What kind of experience do you sell? And then, given that experience, what products do you want to work with? You can always change them. I don't think your business plan says, "I'm going to specifically work with this supplier only." But what do I want to focus on? So that way, when you're talking to clients and you're trying to find new clients, you can say, what does my business do? And numerically, this is what my goal is. My overhead needs to be at this level, not more. My gross margin needs to be at this percentage for 90% of the jobs that I do. And my revenue goals over the next 3 years are these. So that's the numeric part of your business plan. And just going back to the whole AI, I use it a lot, too much. But one of the best things I do is when I do something and I put together a proposal, I put together any sort of document, I'll upload it to AI and then I'll say, what am I missing? Which I never thought to do before. It's a great question. Here's my business plan. What am I missing? And it's just a wonderful way of getting ideas that you didn't think of.
So, what is the supplier role in all of this? Because, I mean, obviously, people need product to put into their showrooms. Absolutely. Suppliers want their products in these showrooms, especially if it's one of their either more active or better dealers. What is a comfortable level to have vendor involvement without also skewing the business plan? Because you might sit there and think, okay, well, I've got a vendor coming in, they're giving me all the product to fit out this entire showroom. It's a success. But that doesn't necessarily make it true.
Right, right. Well, first of all, it has to be the vendors that you work with and that the suppliers that you sell. Um, but a lot of them will offer you either free products or very discounted products if you're putting them in the showroom, and they can help with that. I think if you're, well, let me step back for a second. Take a look at your business. Are you a 60/40 or a 40/60? What do I mean by that? Is your business made up of 60% sales of equipment and 40% labor to install it? Or are you, what was the other, 60% labor and 40% equipment? So a lot of integrators run the gamut. Some do more equipment and less labor. Some do more labor and less equipment. The more equipment heavy you are in terms of your profit is made up of selling the equipment and labor, because that's the profitable part. And if you can keep your labor on time and on budget, that's can be profitable. But if your business itself is made up of more equipment sales than labor, then you want to have a tight relationship with your suppliers. So you want to go back to how do you sell your company? How do you sell the jobs that and the projects that your company does? Because I've seen integrators out there that are 60/40, and I've seen them that are 40/60. They're all over the map.
For more than 20 years, Connected Magazine has been the leading voice for the Australian AV and custom integration industry, and it continues to hold that position today. Commercial and residential integrators can head to Connected Magazine or connectedmag.com.au for the latest news, new products, and deeper insight into where the industry is heading. To learn more, head to the website. The link is in this episode's description, or have a chat with the team next time you see them at a trade show or local event. Now, if you're looking for serious design firepower behind your next project, let me introduce you to Colosseum. Colosseum is a white label design and documentation partner built specifically for integrators, specialising in cinema and media room design, lighting control, and automation engineering. And their new Spark program is a big deal. If your vendor is Spark enabled, you can unlock Colosseum designed cinemas at nearly half the usual cost. Lower upfront investment, immersive 3D walkthroughs, faster sales conversations. Colosseum really is the design and documentation wingman you didn't know you needed. And I guess the integrator themselves also has to be comfortable to say no to a vendor and not let them hijack their showroom as well to just become a outpost for that supplier as another retail center. How do people get comfortable saying no? Because that's a massive issue that I've noticed in the industry for a very long time. People don't say no.
Yeah, that's a hard one. That's a hard one. Um, if you go back to creating your business plan and look at what your goals are, when something fits within your goals, then you can do it. If it's steering you all the way off to the side, then you're going to have to say no. And at that point, what you're saying is, I look, Paul, you and I value our relationship. This is a great offer, but my business doesn't include 100% of your equipment in my showroom or whatever it is. So you go back to, I still value our relationship. I want to continue to work with you, but the way my business is structured, this doesn't fit exactly right. We can find a way to make it work, but what you're offering is something that I just can't say yes to.
Yeah, and you just have to become comfortable with that because ultimately it's your business, not the supplier's business. And they're there to help, and relationships are great, but it is ultimately your business. So going back then to what you were talking about in terms of the sales process, a showroom itself is not going to sell anything. It's just it's a building with stuff in it. So where does it fit in the overall sales process in your mind? Then is it something they should an integrator should be using from the very beginning to show what's possible to build excitement, or is it really kind of something that comes in a bit later once you've had those initial conversations as almost a closing tool?
Well, no, it's not a closing tool. I think it's needed much earlier. A showroom can be a prospective client gatherer. You can use it to try and get clients. So I know one company that does webinars, or I'm sorry, does presentations, and they're like safety, and they sell a lot of safety in the home. And they invite people and they say, we can do this, but I just want you to know what are some of the things that you can do to improve safety in your home. Or similar if you're focusing on functional living and aging in place. You can bring people in and do these presentations where you're not selling yourself, you're trying to educate the community about how you can improve safety in your home, if that's a big portion of what you sell. So that you're bringing not even pre-prospective clients into the showroom. And you can make it as sort of product agnostic and company agnostic as you want. You can say, look, there are a lot of people out there that can install this for you. So, excuse me, certainly we would love it if you would pick us, but what I want to do is show you what's out there. And then you decide. So that's at the very beginning of the sales process. I think the showroom has to be done when before you put together a proposal. You can't be spending all this time and energy if they haven't specced out the equipment. So it's the sales process where you're speccing out the equipment, where you're trying to say, I want to show you what these are. The best thing you can do in a showroom is have sort of sections like a good, better, best. You can say, look, this is what we offer, but this is better and the more expensive, and then this is the best and top of the line. What people will often do with that is instead of just going for the lowest price, they will go for the middle price because they feel like, oh, I'm getting a good deal. But that way you're showing them, because prices, can be anything you want. It's like when I did a remodel and I said, I really think I'd love to have a bay window. And they said, okay, well, should we put that in? I'm like, I don't know. I threw it out there and they're like, okay, well, should we put that into plans and price it out? I'm like, I don't know. Is it going to cost me $500 for this bay window? Is it going to cost me $5,000? Because before I even know, tell me how much the range of how much something costs before I tell you go for it. Now, some integrators work with the rich and famous and they don't care. And they're like, give me everything and give me the high end of everything. But it depends also on who your clientele is. Or is your clientele where you're working with the owner's rep, you never see the person, they're all the very rich and the very famous? You have to handle that differently. They don't typically walk through showrooms. Or is it sort of the typical homeowner, and what's the average job size? So all of these questions I'm throwing out here because I can't come up with an answer until you know really who you're talking to.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, from I guess, the experience of taking a client into the showroom, how structured should that be then? Because you're talking about people doing presentations. Should they be doing a presentation for every person who walk in? Should it be the same process that they take every client through? Or does that almost become this kind of weird theme park tour of this is what we do, and it becomes too regimented and it's not personalized enough? So where do they draw that line?
Yeah. So there were two sort of separate things I was talking about. One is this lunch and learn teaching about that. That's its own process, and you may or may not get prospective clients out of that. But what you're talking about is no, I don't think you can do that, um, because it's you go through and they're like, well, I'm not interested in a projector. I don't need a projector, or I'm not here. Here's our golf simulator. I like that. Should I spend a lot of time talking about it? Well, my client doesn't play golf, thinks it's a stupid sport, and has absolutely no interest in it. So you can have stuff in there, especially those companies that are larger and have lots of information, lots of different sort of hubs in their showroom. Um, so I don't think you can build out a script. I think it's important if you say, I want to answer the questions the client has, and I want to show them what they're interested in. And then I will take them off to something and say, and not spend a lot of time on it, but if you're interested, let me show you what this golf simulator does. And then you can find out they haven't told you they play golf or not. So I think it is important to sort of stretch their mind and have them look at different things. I was never even thinking about furniture. I wasn't thinking about having the home theater chairs. So you don't want to just not show them something when they say they're not interested in it, but you don't want to harp on it and they feel like they're just being sold to.
So let's talk about the dirty word of profit, which we've mentioned a couple of times. Obviously, there needs to be a return on investment and realistically a profit in order to make a showroom justifiable. Are there any tips or traps that you've come across when people are building showrooms that you can sit and go, absolutely avoid this, or if you're not doing that, you are making a massive mistake?
So I think I've mentioned some of those, but I think just like a project that you do for a client, you have to come up with a set of plans and a budget and do it as if you are your own client. Too many people say, I'm just going to build a showroom, and they don't really have a plan, and it goes way over budget. I'm like, okay, I set aside $100,000 to build this, and when all was said and done, we spent 250. Well, what good is that? If you'd wanted to spend 250, then you should have had a plan to spend 250. So the biggest mistake is not treating yourself as your own client and coming up with a budget. What equipment do I want in the showroom? Some equipment maybe I don't need to. Or how many different kinds? Let's say I'm just going to do like shades for a second. Do I need to have every color of every shade? Probably not. Do I need to have show them the blackout versus not blackout? Which kinds of shades do I need to have? So I can show them there are these alternatives. Um, I have, what are they called? Top, bottom, forget where it comes down from the top or goes up from the bottom. Is that something that you work with and show them, or not? So how much room do you have, and how many different options do you want to have? So for each thing, should I have something set up with three different projectors so they can see? Probably not. This is the one projector that I sell, and we talk about the value of that project. So I think the biggest mistake people make is they don't come up with a time plan, they don't come up with a budget, and they don't come up with a maintenance plan or maintenance budget. So those are, I think, the three biggest mistakes people make when they start out doing a showroom.
Okay. So a lot of people too, uh, I guess because it is their space, they'll probably want to come up with something that's incredibly innovative and not necessarily something that they can sell. But have you seen anything either through judging of the awards or been in the industry for a while in a showroom where you've sat there and gone, that is one of the smartest applications of technology I've seen, and it's just worked incredibly well that most people wouldn't think about? Have you seen any examples of those, of really innovative solutions?
Wow, that's a good question. I don't think what I've seen is where I've walked in and thought, I would look at this and go, this is the craziest thing I've seen. It's so outlandish. Nobody would put that in their home. All you're trying to do is be cool and catchy or whatever. Um, no, I haven't. That's interesting. That'd be a good question. I haven't seen that. And again, I only do some of very few things with the showrooms. One year we did a lot of showroom stuff, but the judging does is spending more on business, talks about showrooms, but not like it used to. So I haven't had a chance to see something that was really cool. That's interesting. I have to think about that.
So last question then for you. Let's call this a matter of taste. How important is it then for furniture and soft furnishings within a showroom to reflect current design trends, um, rather than your own personal taste?
It's funny, just because I did this webinar yesterday, we were talking about working with designers, and designers will do this. I'm the designer in New York, and when you walk into a home, you're like, oh, that's a Leslie Shiner home. She's the one and certain designers can do that. I don't think integrators can do that. I can't walk in and go, oh, that's a Paul Skelton home. I can tell. So I don't think you have to do what your customers want, not necessarily what you want. And you have to look at anything that you put in your showroom and hope that it has a 3 to 5 year life. So some people create stuff and it comes and goes so quickly. You go to some of the conferences and there's these, the new products, and you look at that and some will take off and some won't. So having something new, I don't think helps a lot unless you think it has sustainability. So what you have to do, and the furniture is a great example. You have to I would say go with something that's more traditional, because if you go with the outlandish, it might have a 3 month life as opposed to a 3 or 5 year life. So because it costs money. Now, if somebody who just created the craziest chair gives it to me to put in my showroom, sure, you could put that in there. But if you're paying for any of that, you don't want to be paying for the latest and greatest on every single thing, because it just oftentimes doesn't have a long life. And I'm looking for the biggest, you're trying to get the biggest bang for your buck. If I spend this much money, I need to have some sort of return on it. And if the return is I have to rip it out in 5 months because nobody liked it, that's not helpful for your company. So again, you want to look at, what is it that I want to sell? How can I use this equipment in here? How can I use this to get my clients to purchase more, or to be excited about what it would look like in the long run, to be able to understand what's involved in the process, and use that to do one of two things: increase my revenue if that's a goal and I have the bandwidth to do it, and or keep my volume the same but make the jobs more profitable by selling higher end equipment, by going about it in such a way that you can charge more, and you may be increasing your revenue, but not necessarily increasing the volume, or the total work that your employees are having to install.
Excellent. Well, that's all the time that we have for today. So I really appreciate you being here, and first person to be on the podcast twice, and you're probably going to be the first person to be on here 3 times. So really appreciate you
Oh,
being.
that was great. No, I think you asked really good questions. I was thinking, should I have gotten those ahead of time? But no, I did not get them ahead of time. And I think it's a great issue. And I think it's an important thing that a lot of integrators are struggling with, is that something that we should do? Don't do it just because everybody else is doing it, or because somebody told you that you need to do it. Sit down and work out the plan, work out the numbers, and work out your goals. And if you get those 3 things in line and you can move forward with it, then you can move forward, and then make sure that you go back. Did I meet my plan? Did I meet my numbers? Did I meet my goals?
Thank you to Leslie for being so generous with her time. A few things I'm taking away from that conversation. First, don't build a showroom because everyone else has one. Start with your goals, your numbers, and your plan. If you can't say what the room is actually for, you're not ready to build it. Second, treat the showroom like a job you're doing for your own best client. Scope it, budget it, and plan for the upkeep, not just the build. Leslie's rule of thumb was a return inside 3 years, 5 at the outside. If the maths doesn't get you there, the room probably isn't the right move. And third, the showroom is a selling tool, not a closing tool. Good, better, best on the floor, the chance to touch it and hear the difference. That's what lifts people into the higher end gear. And that's where the margin is. A big thank you to this episode's sponsors, ADI Global, Blue Sound by Amber Technology, Colosseum, and Connected Magazine. Without them, this show doesn't get made. If this one got you thinking about your business, share it with someone in the industry who needs to hear it. Thanks for listening to Master Integrator. I'm Paul Skelton. I'll see you next time.